Deep in the darkness of Moria, sleeping for over 5,000 years, lay one of the most terrifying creatures in Middle-earth, a demon of shadow and flame, a survivor from the First Age who had hidden beneath the roots of the mountains since before the Second Age even began. The dwarves called it Durin's Bane, the elves called it the Nameless Terror. Today, we're diving deep into the history and mystery of the Balrog of Moria, deeper than the dwarves of Khazad-dûm ever should have gone. We'll cover what Tolkien actually wrote about this ancient evil, and then explore some of the most intriguing theories surrounding this enigmatic being. Part 1. The Known History. Origins among the Maiar. The Balrog of Moria was, like all Balrogs, originally one of the Maiar, the same order of being as Gandalf, Saruman and Sauron. These were angelic spirits created by Eru Ilúvatar before the world existed. The Silmarillion tells us how the Balrogs came to be. Of the Maiar, many were drawn to Melkor's splendour in the days of his greatness, and remained in that allegiance down into his darkness, and others he corrupted afterwards to his service with lies and treacherous gifts. Dreadful among these spirits were the Valor-aukar, the scourges of fire that in Middle-earth were called the Balrogs, demons of terror. So this creature began as a Maiar, a being of light and power, who was seduced by Morgoth either during the music of the Ainur or shortly thereafter. It descended into Arda with the other Ainur and took form as a Balrog, a being of shadow and flame, wielding whips of fire and terror itself as weapons. The Wars of Beleriand. We know that Durin's Bane fought in the Wars of Beleriand during the First Age, serving under Morgoth. The specifics of which battles it participated in, or what role it played, remain unknown to us. It may have served directly under Gothmog, the Lord of Balrogs. It could have been present at the Nirnaeth Arnoediad or the fall of Gondolin. Tolkien never tells us. What we know for certain is that this Balrog survived the War of Wrath, the final cataclysmic battle that ended the First Age and overthrew Morgoth. The Great Escape. The Lord of the Rings gives us this account of what happened next. Thus they roused from sleep a thing of terror that, flying from Thangorodrim, had lain hidden at the foundations of the earth since the coming of the host of the West, a Balrog of Morgoth. When Morgoth's fortress of Thangorodrim was broken, and the Dark Lord was cast into the void, this Balrog fled. It escaped the War of Wrath and made its way east, deep into the roots of the Misty Mountains. It found its way beneath the mountain called Barrazin-Bar, right under what would become the dwarven kingdom of Khazad-dûm, and there it slept for over 5,000 years. The War of Wrath ended around the year 587 of the First Age. The entire Second Age would pass, 3,441 years, then nearly 2 millennia of the Third Age would follow. For over 5,500 years, this creature lay dormant in the darkness, undisturbed, sleeping away the ages while entire civilizations rose and fell above it. It slept through the forging of the Rings of Power, through the fall of Númenor, through the Last Alliance and Sauron's first defeat. It slept through the loss of the One Ring and the fading of Gondor's glory, sleeping, dreaming whatever dreams a demon dreams, in the absolute darkness beneath the world. The awakening of terror. In the year 1980 of the Third Age, the dwarves of Khazad-dûm were at the height of their prosperity. Their realm was the greatest kingdom the dwarves had ever built. Their mines produced mithril, the most precious metal in Middle-earth. King Durin VI ruled over a realm of unmatched wealth and power, but the veins of mithril were running thin. The dwarves delved deeper, seeking more of the precious metal, too deep and too greedily, as Saruman would later say, and they woke it up. The Balrog rose from its millennia of sleep in fury. It killed King Durin VI that same year, earning its name among the dwarves as Durin's Bane. Durin's son, Nine I, attempted to destroy the creature in 1981. He too was slain. The dwarves of Khazad-dûm, the mightiest of their race, were forced to abandon their ancient home. The greatest kingdom in dwarven history was emptied in a single year. The elves of Lothlorien, who did not yet know what manner of creature dwelled within, began calling the ruins by a new name: Moria, the Black Pit. The Dark Years. For over 1,000 years the Balrog dwelled alone in Moria. The elves called it the Nameless Terror, not knowing its true nature. The dwarves spoke of Durin's Bane in whispered legends, the monster that had destroyed their greatest kingdom. Around the year 2480, Sauron began sending orcs to occupy the Misty Mountains. Some came to Moria, and interestingly the Balrog allowed them to stay. The orcs and trolls dwelled in the upper levels while the Balrog remained in the depths, but they feared it absolutely, and the Balrog ruled as the true master of Moria. In 2799, the dwarves won the Battle of Azanul Bizarre against the orcs at Moria's gates. They wished to reclaim their ancient home, but Dain Ironfoot, who had slain the orc chieftain Azog, looked beyond the gates and felt the terror of the Balrog waiting within. He declared that Moria could not be taken while Durin's Bane remained. Nearly 200 years later, in 2989, Balin led an expedition from the Lonely Mountain in an attempt to reclaim their greatest realm. For 5 years his expedition seemed successful. Then the orcs, emboldened by the presence of the Balrog, destroyed them all. When the Fellowship arrived 30 years later, they would find only Balin's tomb and the record of the doomed expedition. The Battle with Gandalf. In January of 3019, the Fellowship of the Ring travelled through Moria. In the chamber of Mazarbul, Gandalf tried to seal a door with a shutting spell. On the other side, the Balrog cast a counterspell, revealing that Balrogs possessed magical abilities beyond just physical might and terror. Gandalf later described this counterspell as terrible and said it nearly broke him. At the bridge of Khazad-dûm, Gandalf made his stand. He identified himself as a servant of the secret fire, wielder of the Flame of Anor. He named the Balrog Flame of Udun, a reference to Morgoth's ancient fortress of Utumno. The confrontation on the bridge was brief but devastating. Gandalf broke the bridge beneath the Balrog's feet, and the creature fell into the abyss. But as it fell, it caught Gandalf with its whip of flame and dragged the wizard down into the darkness. Both plunged into a deep subterranean lake at the roots of the mountains. The cold water quenched the Balrog's flames, reducing it to what Gandalf later described as a thing of slime, stronger than a strangling snake. But even in this weakened state, it attacked. They fought in the freezing water until the Balrog fled into ancient tunnels not made by the dwarves, but by things far older. Gandalf pursued it through these passages for 8 days, following it up the endless stair, all the way to Durin's tower at the peak of Zirak-Zagil. There, on the mountaintop, the Balrog's flames reignited. They fought for 2 days and nights in what became known as the Battle of the Peak. Finally, Gandalf threw down his enemy. The Balrog fell from the mountain and broke the mountainside where it struck. And so ended Durin's Bane, the Balrog of Moria, over 5,000 years after it first hid beneath the mountains. So that is what we know from Tolkien's writings. No name, no specific history, no details about which battles it fought in the First Age, or what role it played in Morgoth's armies. Simply that it was a Balrog, it escaped the War of Wrath, it slept for thousands of years beneath the Misty Mountains, and it was finally slain by Gandalf the Grey. Everything beyond these facts is theory, speculation, and educated guesswork based on the limited information we have. And so we turn now to some of the most fascinating theories about this creature. Part 2. Theories and Mysteries. One of the great mysteries surrounding the Balrog is how it actually reached Moria from Thangorodrim. The texts tell us it fled from Thangorodrim and hid at the foundations of the earth, but the specifics of this journey remain unclear. When Gandalf recounted his battle with the Balrog, he mentioned something remarkable. Till at last he fled into dark tunnels. They were not made by Durin's folk. Far, far below the deepest delvings of the dwarves, the world is gnawed by nameless things. Even Sauron does not know of them. They are older than he. These mysterious tunnels exist beneath all of Middle-earth, created by entities so ancient that even Sauron doesn't know about them. Gandalf specifically says they're older than Sauron, which means they may even predate the Ainur's descent into the world. Perhaps some of the Balrogs didn't merely hide in the ruins of Utumno and Angband. Perhaps they fled deeper, into these ancient tunnels beneath the fortresses, tunnels that could lead anywhere in Middle-earth. During the War of Wrath, when Thangorodrim fell and Morgoth was cast into the void, the Balrog of Moria may not have fled across the surface at all. It could have descended into these primordial passages beneath Angband and travelled through the roots of the earth, eventually settling beneath Barad-dûr. This would explain several things. First, how it travelled such a vast distance while the host of the Valar was destroying everything in their path. Moving through deep tunnels would have kept it safe from detection. Second, why it settled specifically beneath Moria. Perhaps those ancient tunnels had natural termini or junctions, and one of them happened to be beneath the misty mountains. Third, how it knew about these tunnels during its fight with Gandalf. The text says the Balrog became acquainted with these passages during its long stay in Moria, but perhaps it already knew about them from using them to escape in the first place. This theory also connects to something else Tolkien mentioned about the deep places. Could the Watcher in the water be one of these ancient things as well? Did it also use these tunnels to migrate from the ruins of Angband to Moria? It's speculation, certainly, but speculation that fits with what little Tolkien told us about the depths of the world. The question of Lungorthin. In some of Tolkien's earlier writings, specifically in the Lay of the Children of Húrin, he mentions another named Balrog, Lungorthin, described as Lord of Balrogs. We know Gothmog was the Lord of Balrogs, the High Captain of Angband. Christopher Tolkien suggested that Lungorthin was likely a Balrog Lord rather than the Lord, essentially a high-ranking Balrog beneath Gothmog. The text indicates that in the Nirnaeth Arnoediad, Gothmog killed Fingon with the help of another Balrog, possibly Lungorthin. This suggests Lungorthin was important enough to fight alongside Gothmog against a High King of the Noldor. Gothmog died at Gondolin. We have no record of Lungorthin's death. He's mentioned once and never appears again in Tolkien's writings. It's possible that Lungorthin survived the War of Wrath and became the Balrog of Moria. Consider the evidence. Durin's Bane was clearly powerful. It held Moria alone for over 1,000 years. It drove out the greatest dwarven kingdom in history. It withstood Gandalf, a Maiar wielding one of the three rings, for 8 days of pursuit and 2 days of direct combat, before finally being defeated. This suggests a Balrog of significant power and skill. If Lungorthin was indeed Gothmog's second-in-command, he would have been among the most powerful Balrogs in existence. That would fit with Durin's Bane's impressive showing against Gandalf. The sophisticated counterspell that Durin's Bane used against Gandalf shows advanced magical abilities. A high-ranking Balrog would likely have possessed such power. However, this remains almost entirely speculative. Tolkien never made this connection explicitly. Lungorthin appears in early drafts and poems, while Durin's Bane appears in the published Lord of the Rings. It's quite possible Tolkien simply forgot about Lungorthin, or intended him to be killed during the War of Wrath. But it's intriguing to imagine that the Balrog Gandalf fought had a name after all, a name lost to history, known only in the ancient songs of the First Age. Why it remained in Moria. One of the puzzles about the Balrog is why it stayed in Moria for over 1,000 years after it awoke. It never left. It never sought out Sauron, another servant of Morgoth who was rising to power in the world above. The Silmarillion gives us insight into Balrog behaviour. When Morgoth cried out after fighting Ungoliant, deep in forgotten places that cry was heard. Far beneath the ruined halls of Angband, Balrogs lurked still, awaiting ever the return of their lord, and now swiftly they arose. The key phrase here is awaiting ever the return of their lord. Balrogs, it seems, were utterly devoted to Morgoth specifically, not just to evil in general, but to their particular master. In Morgoth's absence, they lurked in deep places waiting. Durin's Bane likely had the same instinct. With Morgoth cast into the void, never to return until the Dagor Dagorath, the Balrog had no master to serve. It wasn't interested in conquest or domination for its own sake. It simply existed, dwelling in the darkness, killing anything that disturbed it, but otherwise content to remain in its deep places. As for Sauron, we should remember that Balrogs are Maya, and Sauron is also a Maya. They're the same order of being. Sauron was never Morgoth's equal, merely his most powerful servant. Whether Sauron could have controlled a Balrog remains debatable. The orcs feared the Balrog. Sauron's orcs came to Moria but lived in what the texts describe as an uneasy alliance with the Balrog, fearing it greatly. If Sauron could have commanded the creature, why didn't he? Why not have this ancient demon lead his armies, as Gothmog once led Morgoth's? The most likely answer is that the Balrog simply had no interest in Sauron's war. It cared nothing for rings of power or the affairs of the world above. It was a creature of malice, Morgoth's malice, and in Morgoth's absence that malice had no direction. It remained in the dark places, a remnant of an earlier age waiting for a master who would never return. The Sauron connection. There's an intriguing footnote in Appendix A that suggests another possibility. Or released from prison, it may well be that it had already been awakened by the malice of Sauron. This raises the possibility that perhaps the dwarves didn't wake the Balrog at all. Perhaps Sauron did. The Balrog awoke in 1980, while Sauron's power was growing in nearby Dol Guldur. The text tells us that all evil things were stirring around this time. Sauron may have deliberately woken the creature to drive the dwarves out, then filled Moria with orcs to control the mountain passes. This would explain the orcs' quick occupation of the halls and their uneasy alliance with the Balrog. Sauron sent them there but could not control the Balrog directly. The creature served Sauron's purposes without serving Sauron himself. The last of its kind. Tolkien originally wrote about hosts of Balrogs in his early drafts, but later revised this dramatically. In his later conception, only 3 to 7 Balrogs ever existed in total. We know 2 died at Gondolin, Gothmog and the Balrog killed by Glorfindel. If only 3 Balrogs existed in total, then Durin's Bane was the last of its kind. The Silmarillion says some few Balrogs fled and hid after the War of Wrath, suggesting more than one survived initially. But if other Balrogs existed at the end of the Third Age, it seems strange that Sauron never used them in the War of the Ring. The absence of any other Balrogs in the Third Age suggests Durin's Bane was likely the last. The Valar's victory in the War of Wrath was absolute. One Balrog surviving 5 more millennia is remarkable enough. Multiple Balrogs surviving and never appearing seems unlikely. Yet Tolkien left it deliberately ambiguous. Perhaps other ancient evils still sleep in forgotten depths. The uncertainty itself adds to the sense of horror and mystery. In the end, we know remarkably little about the Balrog of Moria. We know it was a Maya corrupted by Morgoth. We know it fought in the First Age. We know it escaped the War of Wrath and slept for over 5,000 years beneath the misty mountains. We know it destroyed Khazad-dûm and was finally slain by Gandalf. But its name remains unknown. Its specific history is lost. Which battles it fought, why it chose to hide beneath Moria specifically, whether it was Lungorthin or some other named Balrog. It's a demon of shadow and flame. It's a survivor from before the histories were written. It's Durin's Bane, the nameless terror, the thing that lurked in the deepest darkness beneath the world. Thanks for joining us in this deep dive tonight. Until next time, stay safe and stay by the fire.